Welcome to Under the Covers. I am your host, Siren, and tonight I am your guide through the depths of the darkness. Pour yourself a drink, do some gardening, and curl up under the covers as we surrender into the abyss. I'm a security guard at a failing mall, and I just found something awful in the basement. Hey, I just got a complaint that some guy is washing his dick in the men's room sink. Can one of you guys go deal with this? I had to kick the mad shitter out of the mall this morning again. I groaned, then picked up my radio to answer. All right, Connor, but did the mad shitter try and kiss you again this time? I said, grinning into my radio like he could see me. Fuck you, she had a handful of shit ready to go. I really don't know why she hates the Gap store so much. We seriously need guys posted at the front doors of this place at all times. All right, bunny, I'm almost at the bathroom. I'll get back to you. I walked into the men's bathroom, and sure enough, there was an older, homeless-looking man with his junk in the sink. Hey, man, you gotta stop what you're doing. I can't have you washing your dick off in the sink here. My dick, the man replied, perplexed, not stopping what he was doing for even a second. Oh, you must mean my wand, he replied. I groaned. Whatever you say, pal, just put it back in your pants for the love of God. No can do. I'm affected by evil ailments. I must cleanse the dark juices off before it's too late. I had had just about enough of this and walked up behind the man to detain him, but he spun around with the quickness of a gazelle, startling me. I think not, he exclaimed, jumping away from me. I am a warlock of the highest caliber. I have been protecting this realm since before you were a twinkle in your father's eye. Look, this doesn't have to be difficult. I just need you to go and we can put this all behind us. Did you hear that? They're back. The man screamed and started to windmill his dick around in a circle and began to piss. I ran out of the bathroom and grabbed my radio to fill my coworkers in on the situation and get some backup. There was no way in hell I was about to wrestle a half-naked pissing lunatic in a failing mall's bathroom alone. A few minutes later, I saw Connor and my other coworker, Jeff, strolling down the hallway to the washrooms. Took your sweet time, guys. Relax, I wasn't about to face off with your boyfriend on an empty stomach, Jeff said, sucking donut frosting off of his fingers. Connor sighed. Okay, guys, we gotta work together here. We go in single file and we surround this weirdo. We all agreed, and Jeff, bald, buff, and the most intimidating of us, went in first. Hello, Mr. Wizard. Are you... Oh, God damn it. Me and Connor quickly ran in and noticed the air vent had been ripped off of the wall. This asshole went down to the basement, Jeff yelled. What a pain in the ass. I guess we better go find him, Connor said, rubbing the bridge of his nose with his index finger and thumb like an annoyed dad. We made our way through the employees-only door and down a small hallway of the offices until we reached a locked set of double doors. After trying almost half the keys on the cartoonishly large mall key ring, I heard a click and the knob turned. There was a rickety old set of wooden steps in front of us leading down to the basement. I turned on my little flashlight that I keep on my security belt next to my taser and proceeded down the steps. Every board creaked and groaned underneath me, and the middle of the steps bowed, threatening to break the deeper I descended. I made it to the bottom and began looking around for a light switch when I heard a scream followed by a crash behind me. I spun around to see Jeff had fallen through the stairs, taking most of them with him. Jesus fuck, you okay down there? I heard Connor yell from above us. I'm fine. I slipped in something, Jeff said, brushing himself off. But there's no chance we're getting back up that way. Go look for a ladder or something while we look for a little shitball hiding here. I could see Connor nod and dart away from the door as me and Jeff explored the room. I found the small beaded chain from an overhead light hanging from the ceiling and pulled it, illuminating the room in a warm fluorescent glow. Unfortunately, I could now also see that the room we were in was covered with thick, wet-looking black mold all over the walls and ceiling. That's the shit I slipped in. It's sticking like glue, Connor said, scraping his boot across the concrete floor. Behind me was the mall's HVAC system for ventilation, unlabeled boxes of odds and ends, and a few fake Christmas trees, and a trap door that led somewhere deeper than we already were. Well, he's not in here. Let's check that out, Jeff said, pointing at the trap door. We don't know if he's down there. We should wait for Connor. Well, he's certainly not in his room, but he came this way. Jeff gestured as a piece of ventilation had been kicked open. Jeff opened the heavy-looking door, and I was starting to feel claustrophobic just watching him descend the ladder. I really don't know about this, Jeff, I started to say. Ooh, spooky hole in the ground. I'm shaking like Michael J. Fox. Come on, pussy, get your ass down here. Jeff snapped at me. I followed Jeff down the ladder into some cement tunnel that seemed to stretch endlessly. I cautiously walked behind Jeff, careful not to touch mold-covered walls. Eventually, the tunnel split into 3 different directions, then 3 more different directions. What is this? I asked. City's old. People used to use these underground tunnels to connect businesses together. Made it easy for city repairmen to get from one place faster or some shit, Jeff replied. That's when I noticed the mold Jeff had slipped in had made its way from his boot all the way up his leg. Jeff, your leg, I started to say, but the words caught in my throat. Jeff tried brushing it off with his hands, but it clung to them and began rapidly spreading up his massive arms onto his face. What the fu... Jeff couldn't even finish his sentence before his mouth began filling with the black slime. He made some awful gurgling noises, and I saw the black shit streaming out of his tear ducts as he clawed his face before collapsing onto the ground. Jeff! Jeff! I yelled. I wanted to shake him, but I didn't want that shit to get on me, too. Then I heard a voice from behind me. I see it got your friend. I just about jumped out of my skin. I shined my flashlight up to see the homeless man from the bathroom walking around me. I warned you about the sinister things, he screamed, running up to Jeff and blocking him of my view. What is this shit? What do you know? It's from hell. It's from space. It's from the 6th dimension. The man began rambling nonsense off at a machine's gun's pace. I was so distracted I didn't even notice Jeff slowly getting to his feet until his huge hands clamped over the hobo's mouth. He slid his hands into the tramp's mouth, one on the bottom jaw and the other on the top, and slowly began pulling them apart. I watched the man's flesh tearing away and heard a snap. His jaw broke. Then Jeff completely ripped the top portion of the man's head off, leaving only the bottom jaw attached to his head. Jeff's eyes were completely black, and the mold was flowing out of his mouth and nose like a faucet. Then he slowly began to grin at me. I screamed and ran, trying desperately to retrace my steps, all while Jeff thundered after me. Eventually, I found the ladder and climbed it back into the basement. I struggled to close the heavy steel door, but I got a surge of adrenaline as I heard footsteps climbing the metal rings of the ladder and slammed it shut behind me. I stacked some heavy boxes on top of the door, but I can still hear Jeff punching at it. I don't know when, but at some point, I got some sort of mold on myself too. If I don't move, it seems to slow down the spread of it, but it's still slowly making its way up my body. I hope Connor gets back soon. I've been yelling, but nobody's even come to check. If he takes too long, I'm afraid of what might happen to him. What I might do to him. I've participated in a secret government project for years, and I can no longer remain silent. I never thought I'd be in this position, sitting here telling you of all this. But the truth can only be buried for so long. I can't tell you my real name for obvious reasons. What I can disclose is that for the last 7 years, I worked as a research analyst for a government contractor. I was assigned to a project that I thought would just be about surveillance systems and data analysis. I had no idea it would lead me into something so dark, so twisted. The project, codenamed Erebus, involved building replicas of major cities miles underground. I'm talking about more than just shelters or bunkers. These were all full-scale cities complete with streets, buildings, public spaces, and even parks, all designed to look exactly like cities above ground. I've seen replicas of New York, Chicago, and parts of San Francisco. But here's the thing that's going to blow your mind. They've created a system of artificial illumination that mimics natural sunlight. I'm not talking about some dim artificial glow. No, this was bright, warm, real sunlight, so that people who were brought down there could live indefinitely without ever knowing the difference. At first, I thought it was just a strange project for some kind of future crisis, like massive bunker for elites or maybe a contingency plan for a global disaster. But then I learned the truth. This wasn't just about survival. The government, our government, has been kidnapping people for years. I mean that literally. They've been taking civilians, entire families even, and bringing them to these underground cities where they've been held in secret. They tell the people that they've been relocated for safety, for a new start, or some other cover story. They make them believe they're part of a relocation program, but it's a lie. The truth is, they've been studying their psychological reactions to living in these replicas of the real world. They want to know what happens when people are placed in environments that are exactly like the ones they're used to, but with no connection to the outside world, no contact with the surface, no real escape. I've laid my eyes on countless reports. They monitor everything: their mental health, their emotions, their stress levels, how they adapt to the artificial sunlight, to the fake seasons, to the fact that they're endlessly trapped. They're studying how people psychologically adjust to being isolated in a city that's perfect on the surface, but hollow and fake underneath. Some of these people have been down there for years, and they have no idea they're part of an experiment. They've been told their families died in a disaster or that they're part of some secret government program. But the reality is far worse. They're being observed like lab rats in a maze. Their every move tracked, their thoughts and behaviors paralyzed, and some don't make it long before their sanity is fractured beyond repair. I was part of the team that helped manage the data. I had access to the psychological reports. I knew exactly what was going on, but I stayed silent for so long. The reports showed the breakdowns, the depressions, the suicides, the violent outbursts. People who went down there as families only to slowly devolve into something completely different. They're trying to see how the human mind reacts when everything it believes to be real is taken away, when everything is a replica. The worst part? There are more of these cities than anyone could possibly know. They're scattered all over the place, buried so deep you'd never think to look. I've seen the maps. The entire project spans continents. Each city is more advanced than the last. I tried to walk away. I couldn't sleep at night knowing what was going on, but every time I tried to talk, they made sure I knew who was in charge. People disappear. People I knew, people who got too close, were never seen again. I can't hide anymore. I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this alive, but at least you'll know the truth. In closing, know this. There is a hell. It exists beneath our feet. There's no fire, no brimstone, just hollow buildings and empty streets. I used to cook for a Hollywood celebrity who'd made me face away from him whilst he ate. "You must remain in the room whilst I dine," he told me 3 years ago. "But face the wall, and do not turn around until I've eaten every last crumb." I nodded. "I will tell you when I've finished," he brashly interrupted, having anticipated my question. And when I made the mistake of breaking his one rule, I saw something terrifying. I hate to disappoint you, but I won't endanger myself by naming this world-famous figure. I have been lying low since February, praying to never cross his path again. I moved from LA to Toronto, put more than 2,000 miles of deserts, mountains, and woodland between me and that man. Yet I still feel his eyes watching upon me every single day. I fear that he hopes to silence me before I spill his secret. That's why I won't tell you to run from LA. Nowhere is safe from him. Instead, I'm hoping that putting the story out there will give him no reason to silence me. You're all about to learn the truth, so he'll have to tread carefully in the future, right? I know I've not named him, but I've put a spotlight on the horrors of the hills. This is a Hollywood icon, and I cooked his lunches and dinner every day from November of 2021 to February of 2024. But one particular lunchtime, an act of recklessness brought my employment to an end. A flatbread topped with charred spring onions, chili flakes, and feta. That was the dish. A modest lunch for a self-proclaimed modest man. Perfectly ordinary food. I didn't serve the heart of a stillborn babe. Not the ribs of some famous rival. Just a light, nutritious dish to bridge breakfast and dinner. That day was the same as any other, so I don't know why I did it. Looked. I spent 3 years cooking for my client, and I'd never previously questioned his only rule. I hadn't dreamt of disobeying him, as he paid such a distinguishedly inflated salary. Not until one ordinary day in late February. I placed the flatbread on the table, walked over to the kitchen counter, then focused my gaze on the wall ahead. Twiddled my thumbs, waited patiently whilst he tucked noisily into his meal. That was something I'd always noticed, the sound, the slaps, the smacks of his lips, tongue, and teeth meeting various food textures. I don't have misophonia, but that man managed to produce noises which utterly perturbed me. I don't care about those who talk whilst they eat. I don't even care about those who eat with their mouths open. No, the racket of this man's feasting disturbed me because it always sounded like more than one person eating. There were even the distant sounds of what I'd convinced myself were tiny voices, as if the man had spent 4 years sneaking friends into the kitchen behind my back, as if they were speaking amongst themselves in hushed tones, muttering odd phrases, not food reviews, but comments on culture, comments on countries and histories. This tells us, in the mountains of Malaysia, 400 years ago, the snippets of insights were always too quiet to fully distinguish. Of course, it was the wet sloshing and smacking that stole most of my attention. I tried to make meals that were softer in the hope that this would lead to quieter munching. I served yogurt, risotto, and so on. No matter what I attempted, the sounds never lessened, and I know that this was no mean-spirited joke. He wasn't sharing his meal with hidden guests, though I certainly wouldn't have been the first woman to find myself at the receiving end of his bizarre antics. Believe me, over the years, I've considered numerous scenarios in my head, but none of them felt right. None of them warmed my chilled flesh whilst that awful man ate, so I eventually broke. Something came over me. Madness, I suppose, born of years of working in a draining environment, all for the healthy heap of bucks. Well, I'd passed my threshold. The money no longer mattered. I had to know. I turned away from the wall. I saw the man at the kitchen table was not eating. Not in any human sense of the word. The sides of his face had opened like the skin of a tangerine, revealing neither hidden tissue nor bone beneath. There was a crater within his skull. A crater into which he was shoveling torn strips of lovingly cooked flatbread. The meal was not disappearing into a mouth. There was no mouth below the celebrity's unzipped face. Chunks of bread and toppings were washed over a dozen rolling eyeballs, each with black sclera, a white iris, and a red pupil. Inhuman eyes. Eyes that were not consuming food, but letting the broken fragments slide off their rolling surfaces, as if absorbing the meal's secrets, learning something from it. And the flatbread did not disappear into the body below, it disintegrated in the black, watery film coating those many eyes. I was too haunted to scream, but I'd already been detected. The celebrity stopped. His hand hovered, and those many eyes coated in dissolving crumbs of my meal swiveled to my face. Then the man started to tremble violently, crushing the remaining handful of flatbread in the pit of his palm. I allowed my mouth to release a meek whimper as flecks of bread clattered against the china plate below. My eyes had already flitted towards the kitchen entrance and the lobby behind it. The front door was in sight, and my legs, weak, carried me towards it. But the man did not need to stand to pursue me. He punched his arm forward, and a long, reptilian tentacle tore through his open palm, escaped from his prison of human flesh, then shot across the kitchen towards me. I was already crossing the lobby as the lunging limb hissed at me from its black scales. I felt the alien's arms, stale breath against my back, cutting through my t-shirt as that man sought my flesh, not to eat, but to wash over his many eyeballs. He wanted to soak me up, study me, and as I thought of all the womanizing he'd done over the years, the many flings who'd come and gone, I wondered whether any of them had met that fate. I fumbled with the latch for an eternal second, flung the door open, and triumphantly made it to the porch. But the fine prick of the sharp limb caught my spine as I stumbled onto the driveway. Instantly stained my shirt with a staggeringly large pool of blood. Yelping in agony, I pushed onwards, pushed across the driveway, scaled the fence, and ran through the many streets of Beverly Hills. I remember little of what followed. Barely remember how I ended up in Toronto, in all honesty. I know that I abandoned everything. My home, my friends, my family, my life. In spite of that, this nightmare isn't over. For months I have felt something watching me. I'm convinced that this celebrity eats more than people food. I will handle my own breakfasts, the star firmly told me back in 21. I replied, "Are you sure? I mean, I make a mean. You would not want to cater to my morning needs," he half growled. At the end of the day, this is about more than getting the truth out there, more than hopefully protecting myself from. This is a cautionary tale. No matter how good the pay, do not become any celebrity's personal chef in LA.